Welcome to Everyday Strengths. I'm Trey Gamage, joined today by Wendy Turner. She is not just a teacher, in fact, she is an author of Embracing Adult SEL, an educator's guide to personal and social emotional learning success. This show is brought to you to talk about how we highlight how Wendy leverages her strengths to be more effective in her role. Wendy, thank you very much for joining me on the show. And how do you introduce yourself to people? I'm not just a teacher. What are you?
Hi Trey, it's so wonderful to be here. Thank you for inviting me. I think my tagline right now is not just a teacher, and that comes from sometimes people tag teachers as, oh, you're just a teacher, right? So you're not, you're in a classroom. So maybe you're not in leadership and education. Maybe you're not in a position to make change. Maybe you're not in a position to influence what's happening. But I reject that kind of common label. And to prove it, I've done a lot of writing. I've done a lot of speaking about my passion, which is social emotional learning. I was really fortunate to be named the Teacher of the Year for my state in Delaware in 2017. And that just opened up a lot of doors and a lot of opportunities. Some discomfort came along with that, but I kind of pushed through. And now, as you mentioned, I'm a published author. I regularly write blogs about different ideas related to SEL. I'm creative with implementing SEL concepts in the classroom. And I want to share that with people because ultimately I want to help teachers grow their skills and bring SEL infused environments to their learning spaces and their students so that they can have great learning experiences and a more successful, enjoyable, path as a teacher.
Yes. That's powerful, Wendy. I think it's important to say too, because I think classroom leaders, I was shocked myself. So I, like you, and we'll get to, I don't have a traditional education background. I studied psychology in undergrad and then jumped into education. So I was actually shocked when I found out that most teachers didn't see themselves as leaders. I'm like, you didn't
Like what? Right.
you didn't know you were leading 20 people every day for the last 20 years, that you were like building a generation. And now that I see it and hearing you say that, like, that's not a fault on the teacher. That's a
Right.
fault on how the teacher is considered. So
Yeah.
I myself am writing a book right now focused on everyday strengths, and I'm writing it from my head to principals, but I'm actually writing it to leaders. And so when I think of leaders, I'm thinking about every level of leadership, from the superintendent to the department director, from the classroom teacher to the head teacher to the classroom teacher to the janitorial staff.
Yeah.
Everybody's leading in their domain, and so that's something that's really important to me. I think you just highlighted that's not always the case. And shout out to you for busting through those ceilings to prove, yeah, teaching is not, that's not just some job. Like, there's a lot that I do. Even if you didn't have those other accolades, teaching would still be a viable profession,
Right.
though
Exactly.
not respected by folks for whatever reason that may be. Ooh, what a tangent. We're starting off kind of hot here. I wasn't expecting that one.
Can I just say I love what you just said? It said just said we're all leading in our domain, and I
Mhm.
think that in every profession there's leaders at every level and in every nook and cranny. And like you just highlighted it, like there's people leading in facilities and education spaces. I always call traditional leaders like building principals or people at district office. I call them people with positional authority. So
Mm.
I don't have positional authority. I mean, I am the leader of my third grade classroom. You can say that. And I could be the leader of a team, like a third grade team, or if you're at a middle or high school level, maybe you're leading like your science department or something. But I am absolutely, I call myself an educator, author, and teacher leader because I'm leading in my space around the topic of social emotional learning. And
Mm.
just because I don't have positional authority, that doesn't mean that I don't have something to say and something that people could benefit from if they listen to it. So I do have to push on that sometimes, and it can be a little
Yeah.
uncomfortable. I want to encourage teachers to lead where you can and how you can in your domain. I love that.
Hmm. That's wonderful. I like the way you put it too. So as you do think about putting this together, adult SEL, and so we share this domain, this
Yeah.
love for adult SEL, emotional intelligence, whatever synonym you want to put on it, because it gets so politicized depending on your state. What does that mean? Educator's Guide to Personal, Social, Emotional Learning Success. Break that down for me. So I firsthand have shared it before.
Yeah.
I've called schools in the last year and I said, hey, do you all need help with adult SEL? I get bounced to departments because they think I'm talking about curriculum for students. I'm
Right.
talking about you. I'm
No,
talking about
exactly.
support for you. How does this book address that for personal social emotional success?
All right, so I'll back up a little bit. So you and I know, because we live in this domain, we know that adult SEL is a key component of a successful SEL system, right? So the research tells us that. The research says that if we don't have adults embracing and learning SEL skills and modeling them in the moment in the classroom and living them, that we're not going to be able to help instill them in our students, right? There's an authenticity piece that will be missing, and we can't talk out of both sides of our mouth. Now, with SEL, there are lots of wonderful curriculums out there, but you can do SEL without a curriculum. And I don't really see many curriculums for adult SEL skills. So I said to myself, how can you kind of break this down in a manageable way to help people acquire these skills in what I would call an organized manner? I use the Castle competency model, which I know you do too. So we're talking about 5 core SEL skills. We're talking about self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, relationship skills, and responsible decision-making. Now, each one of those core competencies has tentacles that kind of reach out to the other ones. But in my book, what I do is I help people approach acquiring those skills around each of those competencies. So my book is simply, it's 8 chapters. In the first chapter, I define SEL in a lot of different ways, because you mentioned it's emotional intelligence, it's people skills, it's soft skills, whatever you want to call it. It's kind of this, these are these skills that help make people successful in life in dealing with everyday situations and other human beings. So my first chapter, I define it. I talk about the research. We know the what of the research. We know the why of the research, but I think we struggle with the how. Okay. So when we get to chapter 2 of the book, I offer a really simple framework. And I say we can be organized in developing these skills if we have a framework that is focused around proactive skill development. That means building skills before we need them proactively. In the moment skills we can use. So while something's happening right in the moment, what can we do to navigate a moment? And then reflective skills. So I think if you take that 3-part framework and then apply it to self-awareness, you can proactively build your self-awareness skills. You can have skills for being self-aware in a moment. That's your like kind of right there skills. And then you can use reflective skills to understand your self-awareness after the fact. And then I say, take that framework and apply it to self-management, and take that framework and apply it to social awareness, etc. In the book, I pepper the kind of like the hard stuff, the research-based strategies, with stories from both my personal family life and my school life, because this is the work of the whole person. We talk about the whole child all the time, but I don't feel like we talk about the whole adult very often. And the great thing about this work, and this, Trey, is that when I'm working on these skills in my classroom, I go home and be a better mom, a better wife, a better neighbor, a better sister, a better daughter, because I'm not going to silo these skills and this development into just my work life. I'm going to bring it to all of me, and it just helps you with everything. So that's kind of the format for the book. When you go through the competencies, you get to chapter 8, and I actually call that chapter Living Your Best SEL Life. And I ask you to take moments and say, hey, I just used this skill in this everyday situation, and just like notice it and savor it. And then I also talk about responsible decisions we can make around SEL in classrooms to help us be great educators and leaders.
Goodness,
that was a lot. Sorry, that was a lot.
No, that's what you're 100% right. That's what's missing. I mean, I've read, again, we're on the same soapbox right now.
Yeah.
They're doing the research. You can see research going back to the 90s talking about the what and the why, like you said, but there's still so few hows. Like, why? What is the point of the research if we're not going to generate solutions to solve this problem? So no, thank you for saying that and doing the work. And I think I want to hope at least that shift is happening to recognize that supporting adult SEL, I would argue, is more important than the student SEL, because like you said, take the 20,000, take the 30,000 that you spend on your curriculum, invest that into skills for your teachers, and then you probably are going to get the same outcomes. Now, 2 years after you make that investment, when you have a culture that is sustainable with your adult well-being, that everybody's on the same page, that we know how to resolve conflict, that there's not tension within the staff, now we can introduce a curriculum to our students because our staff, and I don't want this to be taken the wrong way, but
Right.
is emotionally mature enough
Yeah.
to implement that SEL curriculum. Because right now, what happens is we give the curriculum to the adult, but the adult has never practiced that skill in undergrad and preparation. And now we're trying to tell them to tell somebody else is valuable when I don't know the value myself.
Exactly. It's interesting. I know you know a lot of this too. When I had to pitch the book to my publisher, I had to go out and do a landscape analysis of my topic. So there are tons of books about social emotional learning out there. There are tons of books about doing SEL with your students. I literally couldn't find a book that had the title Adult SEL in it. And when my proposal was accepted and my manuscript was done, we went back and forth on the title, and I was adamant that it wasn't called Embracing Adult Social Emotional Learning. It was actually called Embracing Adult SEL, like that catchphrase, Adult SEL, because that's the key phrase that we hear all the time. So I just wanted to put a support out into the marketplace, like something that people could use to get going with this work. Because as you say, if we back map the problem, it's not being included in teacher preparation programs. Schools have changed and kids have changed, and I don't think prep has changed that much. It's starting to change in some ways, but there's people are coming in without a lot of knowledge and skills around this, and we desperately need it for ourselves, and then for the the downstream impacts that are positive for our students and our culture, like you said, like school culture.
Yeah, 100%. Now, Wendy, I think too, what's interesting for me is that this is not your first career, or what's interesting for you, rather. This is your second career. Talk to me about your initial career and why you decided to transition into teaching.
Sure. So, I mean, I could not have started out in a more different career. I studied accounting in my undergraduate college degree program. And so accounting is a bunch of rules about numbers and about how you do things, and teaching couldn't be any more different. But I liked the order of it. I really wanted to be a business person because my father was a business person. And I worked successfully in accounting and finance roles for 17 years. When I was about 35, I was sitting in my cubicle of my big company that I worked in, looking at spreadsheets and numbers. And we had a 6-month-old daughter at that point. And I just kind of sat there one day and I said, I cannot do this for the next 20 years. I cannot sit in this cubicle and analyze financial information. It's a great job, but it just wasn't for me any longer. So I decided to go to school at night to become an elementary education teacher. I got a master's degree during that time. Our son was born during that time. Our first child was 6 months old, our daughter. And I just said to myself, I kind of looked around and thought, I can't do this for the next 20 years. I can't sit in this cubicle and analyze financial information. It was a very good job, but it just was no longer the job for me, to be quite honest. So I went to school at night to become an elementary education teacher. I earned my master's degree. And I would say that at that moment, that really ignited my lifelong learning. It was so exciting to be back in a classroom and to be learning how to do something that was so different from an accounting or finance job. So I just loved it. And it lined up with our children being born. We have 2 kids. So I was learning about how kids learn and, child development milestones with our kids, right there. So it just like lined up really well. And so I became a teacher with my own classroom full time when I was 40 years old.
Wow.
And I haven't looked back. It's, teaching is challenging. I talk about this in the book. Through COVID, education has been very difficult, but it's still a great job that I love, and I'm happy I did it.
Yeah. When you think back, what are some of those strengths that you leverage from the accounting industry into teaching?
So I think just knowing that you need to work very hard to succeed, right? So knowing that you're going to have to put a lot in to get a lot out. I was used to doing that. I think being around all different kinds of people was very helpful. I would go to a variety of big or small companies and have to ask questions of people. And so I think that all those years of dealing with different types of personalities in those settings really has helped me navigate all the different personalities you encounter in education. Your students, their families, your administrators, your peers, which could be people younger than you right out of college, or they could be seasoned, confident veterans with 25 years of teaching experience. So just having all that experience in the business world of dealing with different people helped me and helped me to be more confident. I don't think I would have been anywhere near as confident as like a 22-year-old young person teaching. I think that's something that's really hard for our young teachers to come out and navigate, actually. So just those years of life experience. And, I worked in unpleasant environments. I worked in an environment once where some supervisor stated goals was to make people cry. So you come through like a tough environment like that, you can handle a lot. So it was just helpful to me to have gone through all that beforehand.
Goodness, that's quite the leadership style, I guess, if you could say.
Right.
That's a leadership style. But that's cool. I think the leadership strengths that we have and the way that they show up in our life are cool because you pick up different aspects. My older brother jokes oftentimes. He says he worked at Sherwin Williams. He says Sherwin Williams taught me how to use a fax machine.
Yeah.
Target taught me how to use email. Now I know how to, now he knows how to be a better professional. So he's joking, obviously, but still skills stack.
Yeah.
And when you
Absolutely.
stack those skills, they make a difference. Transitioning into our disc deep dive. As part of your preparation for interviewing on Everyday Strengths, you
Yep.
completed a disc assessment, which is what we use at Everyday Strengths to help leaders be more effective in their role. We're going to highlight 2 pages here to highlight your behavior style. I'm going to read this and give you a chance to kind of talk about how this style shows up in your classroom and in some of the other things that you do professionally. So you're an influencer, Wendy. An influencer show poise and confidence, and they enjoy working with diverse groups of people. They bring a sense of urgency that gets things started and keeps things moving. The spontaneity that influencers bring allows for variety in their environment. They embrace positions of authority and appreciate when others handle some of the details and logistics. Their optimism may overextend the reality at times, and they may need a governing view of the end goals. How does that sit with you, Wendy?
So, wow, that's really interesting. It's almost, I feel like it's a compliment, to be honest, to be named that, but some of the pieces really resonate with me. So, I definitely feel a sense of urgency around getting things done in the classroom and in my professional environment. We have so much to do. We've got a lot of challenges. I need my kids to learn. So, I feel like my energy level is high, and that sense of urgency creates action or movement in the spaces that I'm in. And so
Mm,
I am, it's nice to hear that. Another piece really resonated for me. It said that I am appreciate when others handle some of the details and logistics. I give a ton of responsibility to the kids in my classroom to run things like
mm,
jobs, decisions, whether it's setting up class norms or setting something up or doing something at the end of the day when they're like, can I do this? Can we do this? I'm like, yes, yes, yes. With it, I want to let them decide and do as much as I possibly can within our space. And my sense of urgency keeps things moving. I think I bring some fun to that, in the classroom because I want it to be an energetic and joyful place. So it all
right.
kind of resonates with me. And then I think when I look externally out of just the classroom, I am hopefully trying to help people understand best practices or creative ideas around social emotional learning. I share a lot on social media. I share resources for free because I just want them to get out to people. And then I think another level is authoring blogs or doing a podcast, doing something like this and authoring the book ultimately to keep hopefully influencing people around the what I love so much, which is social emotional learning. So that all kind of makes sense to me. And I do feel like
Mhm.
it's a compliment.
Yeah, I take it as a compliment as well. I think there's a natural tendency that people have to look at the deficit side of things whenever we see data. That could
Mhm.
be with the data in your classroom. You
Yeah.
could have 10 students with A's, but you only see the 3 students with F's.
Yep.
That can be with your own data. Oh, well, my score, this looks low, this looks high. What's that mean? What's wrong with my score? So I appreciate you taking the moment to appreciate the scores and the strengths that you just saw and not highlight some of the weaknesses. I'm sure you see in your work as well. A lot of times, I'll just simply ask a crowd, "Hey, who feels comfortable naming 3 of your top strengths?"
Yeah.
No adults will raise their hand. So
Yeah.
it's crazy to think about how we can go so long without really considering our strengths and just even accepting them.
Yeah.
One thing that I like a lot about the DISC assessment as well is it allows us to kind of look at our natural and adaptive way of communicating and what those preferred styles look like. The other page that I want to cover with us here in our conversation is your natural and adaptive word styles. I've completed over 660 assessments with educators across the country. And I find that most teachers are pretty much split between this I, S, and C style. I
Mhm.
see in your case, you kind of fit that description a little bit as well. Not even just as a teacher, but as the United States, we tend to see that the I style is a little more dominant.
Mhm.
So your natural style, Wendy, reflects the way that you show up at home, essentially, without expectations of professionalism. And your style is an ID. That's right here at the bottom.
Mhm.
We can see it based on these scores.
Okay.
That 50% line represents how much effort or energy you put towards these. And so the red represents how much energy you put into solving problems and being assertive towards solving those problems. And so you put some good effort there. The other one is focused on being people oriented and fast paced. So
Mhm.
you're very fast paced and people oriented when it
Mhm.
relates to solving problems. The cool thing for you is, and what I like to see is, I like to see when folks are their natural style and their adaptive style aligns.
Mhm.
So your ID natural and ID adapted. That means when you show up at work, there's not as much shifting that has to take place.
Yep.
I was a former athlete, and before practice, and when I played college football, I had
Mhm.
to sit in my locker room for 20 or 30 minutes to get myself ready to go hit somebody.
Yeah.
That was not a natural environment for me. It was one that I had to make big adjustments
Mhm.
to get to. In your case, you're aligned right here. And I'm curious, do you feel like your communication style was this aligned in your first career, or is this because of the work that you've been doing on yourself related to adult SEL skills?
So this is so interesting, and I love this. So I think this really proves that I went into the right career, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because in a classroom, you are the influencer, right? Like you are setting the tone for what the oxygen in the room is like. So there's no way that as a staff accountant or as a finance manager, I would ever have this much influence of other people or the environment. I was more like analyzing and giving information. So this, I don't think if we had done this during my first career when I was in the accounting profession, I don't think we would have seen the same results in my adapted style, my works, my workspace. But I think
Mm-hmm.
this shows that I went into a career where I could be social, I could solve problems because you literally, this, you solve problems all day long in a classroom,
Oh
right?
yeah, all
Big
day.
ones, little ones, unanticipated ones you knew about, ones you didn't know about, ones you like, ones you don't like. And so it just it makes so much sense to me. And then I do think like at home, I am the person who's laying out like, okay, we got to get this done, guys, or we got to plan this vacation, or we've got to get these tasks done on a Saturday. Like my husband's kind of more chill, which is why we make a good couple, because he's just naturally much more mellow.
Right.
So I just love seeing that this lines up, and it just tells me I did choose the right thing in being a teacher. The social piece, the problem solving piece, the influencer piece. Every educator in the front of a room is an influencer, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it just all kind of makes sense. And I think the fact that they're lined up well means that I don't have a big mental lift around changing what I have to bring to my workspace. And I talk about this concept in my book called the box of energy. So I don't have to use any of my
Mm.
energy making that shift. And that conserves energy for me. And then that gives me
Yes.
more energy to solve my problems at work. And that is part of my self awareness.
Wendy, that gives me chills to think about. That is so good right there. That's absolutely what you should be seeing and feeling, because that effort and energy, it takes a lot of that to shift. So
Yeah.
we can see. So I mentioned too that this 50-point line is where you put a lot of energy. Underneath this line are more unobservable skills. So
Yeah.
you can see a little bit of a shift underneath with the C and S, the C and S. But
Mm-hmm.
this one, where you do shift, where we do see a large shift, is you're putting more emphasis on being a team player when you show up at
Mm-hmm.
school. You're making sure that there's a consensus, that everybody's on the same page. And if we look, I guess more specifically in your classroom, how you're giving charge to students, you're giving them responsibilities. I think this will reflect your attempts to make sure that you're also being equitable
Mm-hmm.
in that approach, to
Mm-hmm.
make sure that we're on the same page and not showing favoritism to some students. Would you agree with that as well?
For sure. 100%.
Mm. Now I'm going to flip it one
Yep.
more time.
Yep.
And so we built up to thinking about how this stuff works at home, or excuse me, at work. But
Mm-hmm.
how do you flip this the other way? So this is the way I show up at home and then showing up at work, sometimes, and I'm gonna try to go there with you. So my wife and I can't just go home talking about work all day,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
I still have to. I might show up differently, even though those styles
Hmm.
are the same.
Hmm.
When you take off your teacher hat, your author hat, your trainer hat,
Hmm.
what hats do you put on to be a mom again and a wife again? Like, how do those strengths transition back into your
Yeah.
household?
So I think you take those strengths, but they just look a little different. Okay. So I take off the author teacher hat, and I would say I just put on like my listener hat, my human hat, my curiosity hat. And I need all those things in the classroom. But I come home and instead I'm saying to my husband, like, hey, who did you in the office did you run into today? Who'd you have lunch with? Did you get to
Hmm.
exercise? So I'm doing the same thing that I do with my students, like that relentless relationship building, but I'm doing it with my husband and my son. One of the best things about us is that when anyone comes home, whoever's home comes out of the basement, down from upstairs, out of the TV room, and greets them
Hmm.
in the kitchen and says, hey, how are you? How you doing? So we kind of bring some of those same principles to our relationships with each other. So I'm still doing the same thing, except we're talking about different things. But I'm listening to my husband, I'm connecting with him, I'm asking him if he needs help. I'm helping my son be organized, like I might help one of my students be organized. So it's the same types of skills. They just look a little different in the home environment and the professional environment, but you're doing the same thing. So you're not changing who you are. So again, I have a good conservation of energy because I don't have to really like change myself too much. I have about a 12-minute ride to my school. That 12 minutes is enough time for me to decompress,
Hmm.
get through my day, take off my school hat and just walk in and be like, hey, and now I'm Wendy the wife, I'm Wendy the mom, I'm
Yeah.
Wendy the neighbor. So I just
Yeah.
think, again, it makes sense. And again, that's the work of the whole adult, knowing yourself so completely that you don't have to really change who you are to that great of a degree. Like, let me just go sideways with you for a sec, Trey.
Let's go. Go,
Okay.
please.
All right. So we can't afford to not help our students figure out what their strengths are. We can't afford to not do that because we need people in this world who are embracing and cultivating their strengths to be the best person they can be, which involves them being satisfied and then working to solve problems or lend themselves to community and society however they can. We can't afford not to do it. So what if we just really devoted ourselves in elementary school to helping kids find out their strengths? Like, what if someone had helped me in elementary school find out some of these strengths that I have? Then in middle school, what if we really, as part of SEL, devoted ourselves to helping kids, now that they know some of their strengths, kind of line them up with professions, careers,
Right.
options? Here's a silo for someone who's like really focused on being social and problem solving. Here's another silo for someone who's like an introvert but loves to tinker with things. And then what if when we got them into secondary school, we had them working in like kind of like community volunteer or internship type activities. There are some of those out there in
Yeah.
some of those strengths to see if they're a great fit. But what if we just kind of like, really, there's all this talk about reimagining education, and I kind of think we have to do it because it's just education doesn't serve everybody very well the way that it
Right.
is right now. It's so similar to how it was 50 years ago and 100 years ago when things were set up. So what if we just kind of tasked ourselves with doing that, and that was
Hmm.
part of who we were as humans, and then we just like activated that greatness in kids by helping setting them on a path like that.
Yeah, man, that is quite the theory, quite the concept. I feel like you could base school just on what if school was just based on strength? You got problem-based learning, inquiry-based learning. What if just strengths-based learning? All we're going to do is align you with your strengths and
Yeah.
try to put you in the best position to succeed. This is powerful stuff, Wendy. It's clear that you are passionate about this topic at many levels. You have a clear understanding of what the students need, but that reflects back to the adults and what we need. So I find it important as well. I've been doing this work for 7 to 10 years now since I got into education. And so strengths-based training and everyday strengths is where I've created this podcast or created this show to be able to highlight how folks like yourself, Wendy, are leveraging these strengths because we don't practice them often, because it's not a part of teacher prep programs and
Yeah.
certification programs. When we talk about strengths or adult SEL, it can fall on deaf ears or seem like it's not for me. If you're not cleared, even Wendy, you made a mention of like when you go home, that 12 minutes is enough time for you to decompress.
Yeah.
If your transition home is not enough time for you to decompress,
Right.
if you're not aware of how to leverage those strengths, if you're not aware of how to be the best version of yourself, you definitely need to check out Embracing Adult SEL by Wendy Turner, and you need to visit everydaystrengths.com so you can be a part of our leadership effectiveness cohort. These are two practical skills or practical strategies and focus and programs and curriculums that are nearly non-existent in education. So Wendy, thank you so much for joining us today. Where can the people go to find you and Embracing Adult SEL?
So thanks so much. So I am on Facebook at Wendy Turner Everything SEL. I'm on LinkedIn at Wendy Turner. I am on Twitter at Mrs. Wendy M. Turner. So I share resources in all of those spaces. And you can also email me at wendymturner@gmail.com. I answer every email I get. My book is for sale on Amazon and all your major websites. It's also for sale at Routledge.com, which is the publisher. And if you'd like, contact me and I'll send you a coupon for 20% off. And I right now I'm booking book studies for the summer, and I just want to help and support. I'm a resource, so please reach out if you'd like to.
All right. Thank you so much, Wendy, for joining us. Thank you so much, everybody, for listening. This is Everyday Strengths, and we will see you next time.